Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central Television. I am Judith TB. It's time for news now. These are the top stories this hour. President Tinubu sends 2025 to 2027 medium-term expenditure framework to National Assembly for approval. 4 Nigerians jailed by court in the UK over violent knife attack in 2021. Sudan Army Chief rejects foreign interference in country's civil war. Details shortly. And let's begin by telling you that President Bola Tinubu on Tuesday forwarded the medium-term expenditure framework and the fiscal strategy paper to the National Assembly for consideration and approval. Tinubu is also seeking the Senate and House of Assemblies and House of Representatives approval for a fresh $2.2 billion loan. The president's request was contained in letters read on the floor of both chambers of the National Assembly on Tuesday. On 14th November, the federal government proposed a total expenditure of 47.9 trillion naira for the 2025 budget. Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, announced that the Federal Executive Council had also approved the MTEF for 2025 to 2027.
With the provisions of sections 21, subsection 1 and 27, subsection 1, the Debt Management Office, DMO, established Act 2003 and the approval of the Federal Executive Council, a right to request for a resolution of the National Assembly to raise the sum of 2.2 United States dollars, provided as new external borrowing in the 2024 Appropriation Act to part finance the budget deficit of about 9.17 trillion. That I forward here with the 2025 to 2027 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, MTEF and FSP, for a kind consideration and approval by the Senate. The 2025-2027 MTEF and FSP was approved during the Federal Executive Council meeting of 10th day of November 2024. The Senate is invited to note that as the 2025 budget of the federal government of Nigeria will be prepared based on the parameters and fiscal assumptions of the approved 2025 to 2027 MTEF and FSP, it is imperative to seek National Assembly's expeditious legislative action on this submission.
The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has rolled out a set of recommendations on how to make the reforms acceptable and supported by the citizens. Now, this is against the backdrop of frustrations faced by the general public in Nigeria and some other sub-Saharan African countries undergoing economic reforms. The IMF, in its latest Regional Economic Outlook for Sub-Saharan Africa report, noted that the countries involved in deep reforms, including Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia, and Kenya, may now be experiencing what it called adjustment fatigue, while some are facing civil resistance. Nigeria, for instance, has recorded multiple civil unrest and labor shutdowns following disenfranchisement, disenchantment with the impact of the macroeconomic reforms, especially in petrol and foreign exchange deregulations. The IMF's recommendations emphasize broad-based engagement with the populations, a communications strategy clearly articulating the benefits of reform, forging partnerships with key figures in the country. And joining us to discuss this on the news, we have a business and political, as well as policy affairs, public policy analyst, Kenneth Ikenwa. Kenneth, many thanks for joining us. Adjustment fatigue, that's a word I haven't seen. Fatigue is a word I haven't seen in a while. Okay, adjustment fatigue, I don't think I've ever seen that. How do you assess the level of adjustment fatigue among Nigerians and citizens in other sub-Saharan African countries undergoing deep economic reforms?
Well, good evening and thanks for having me on. I mean, this creates a lot of nostalgia that takes me back to some 35 to 40 years. Because I was a little boy when I heard of structural adjustment program. And now for the first time, I'm hearing of another evolution of a concept called adjustment fatigue. But we must speak the truth to power, and we must try to highlight and stress the politics, the global politics that surrounds global economics, and actually look at paradigms that are in the best interests of our country. Now, back to the subject matter, adjustment fatigue, and back to the purveyors of this concept, and to the topic for today. It's very important that we still go back to our history and do some analysis to find out why we were here. Now, some 40 years ago, Nigeria was at par in terms of purchasing power parity and the strength of the naira vis-a-vis, other global currencies, until a particular Bretton Woods institution came in, the IMF, and suggested to us that we needed to structure and readjust and have a program, structural adjustment program, which necessitated some very stringent conditions that brought untold hardship to the Nigerian people as of 1985 and 1986. And that began the catalyst that led us, to going down today as a country. So is history going to repeat itself? And why does this have to be the case? It's important that I educate the Nigerian public that we have three types of nations. And so we have the core nations, we have the periphery nations, and we have the semi-periphery nations. Nigeria happens to be a semi-periphery nation. While the core nations are actually the developed countries that trade with the periphery countries, which are not as developed as Nigeria, and Nigeria is a transition country in between. So you ask yourself the question, some of these policies that have been invented from this Bretton Woods institution, in whose interest are they? Are they in the interest of the periphery nations, or are they in the interest of the semi-periphery nations like Nigeria? Your guess, your answer, and our collective amnesia to forget what happened 40 years ago is as good as mine. These adjustment fatigue, these austerity measures are definitely not in the interest of Nigeria. But we'll see more to this issue as our conversation unfolds and evolves, definitely.
Kenneth, I've spoken with many critics, right, of IMF and all of the suggestions, and when they come in to try to Brentwood, all these Brentwood organizations. And one thing is clear, not everyone is happy with them. And I'm glad you're taking it back to 40 years ago, right? All the way back into the 70s, right? But IMF is also suggesting broad-based engagement with populations to garner support for the reforms. And if I remember correctly, that was the same that happened 40 years ago. So in your view, how visible is it to mobilize public support in countries like Nigeria, where many citizens are struggling with, the immediate effects of these reforms, whether it's fuel price hike or just the naira to the dollar? I think it's 1,700 naira to a dollar at this point.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. Whether it's 1,000 or 1,500, it's unprecedented. Now, there's a local saying in our local pidgin parlance, but I'll say it in English, that says that when a man is crying, even though he is crying, he can see the road. Nigerians are crying. Sub-Saharan African nations are crying, and most Western countries and the owners and members of the Paris Club keep smiling and smiling and smiling and telling us to adjust and telling us to do this and do that. The question is, are we not intelligent enough as a people to fashion out an economic paradigm, to develop our own indigenous organic economic logic that is in the best interest of the 250 million Nigerians, 80% of which are actually living in that multi-dimensional poverty? There is no way, and there is no country, and I want this to be cast in stone, that the IMF has advised to the interest, to the collective benefit of the peoples of that country. It is usually the 1%. It is usually those who have something to gain, those who dance, those who are the whims and caprices of these organizations that usually benefit. Now, I don't deny the fact that we have a bad economy going on, and that for the most part, those that have managed the economy at different dispensations within this democratic sphere that we found ourselves have not done fantastically well. Some progress have been made in some areas, while the worst progress or the worst retrogress have been made in other areas. But it is not for us to sit down as a nation and wait for some people outside that call themselves World Bank economics or IMF economists to tell us what to do. Now, the decisions that have been taken with reference to reforms are not particularly bad. But I have said...
We seem to have lost Kenneth there. We seem to have lost him there. We'll try to bring him back. Very insightful discussion there with Kenneth. He is our analyst who's talking to us about IMF's recommendation. Kenneth, are you back? We'll keep it moving now, this time to Nigeria, where the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Taiwo Oyedele, has reiterated that the proposed tax reform bills currently before the National Assembly are not intended to undermine any particular region of the country, but to establish a tax system that benefits all citizens. Oyedele made this known during an interactive session with lawmakers over the proposed tax reform bills, saying that the proposed legislation seeks to enhance efficiency and increase revenue for states where goods and services are consumed. In his remarks, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, says that the Parliament is yet to take a definitive stance on the proposed legislation, but will ensure it undergoes thorough scrutiny in the interest of Nigerians.
Is Section 40 of the Value Added Tax Act today. It says that when we collect VAT, the federal government should take 15%, the state should take 50%, and local government should take 35%. The amount that is to the credit of states and local government should be shared as follows: 20% based on derivation, which is where you got the VAT from. Give them 20% of the VAT. The remaining 80%, 50% is shared on equal basis. And then 30% is shared based on population. That's what we do today. That method of sharing VAT has problems.
The House has not taken any definitive position on these bills. Our role is to scrutinize them thoroughly, ensuring they align with the best interests of our constituents and the nation at large. We owe this duty to Nigeria.
The former governorship candidate of the Ogun State chapter of the People's Democratic Party, Ladi Adebutu, has been released from custody after being invited and interrogated by the Department of State Services. His release was confirmed by his media aide, Afolabi Orekoya. The Ogun State Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Kayode Adebayo, had earlier confirmed Adebutu's arrest by the DSS in Abeokuta, the state capital, on Monday. Adebutu, who contested as the PDP's governorship candidate in Ogun State in 2023, was reportedly invited for questioning in connection with alleged disturbances during the local government elections held last Saturday. You're watching news now on News Central Television. We're going to a short break. When we return, the UK court jails 4 Nigerians over 2021 knife fight. We'll tell you all about this after the break. Stay with us. And you're welcome back. The four Nigerian students have been sentenced in the United Kingdom for their involvement in a violent altercation involving knives and a baseball bat in Lancaster. The incident, which occurred on New Park Street in the early hours of November 4th, 2021, left one victim with multiple stab wounds. Following a detailed investigation by the Leicester City Police, authorities identified the culprits through CCTV footage, phone tracking and public assistance. The 6-week trial concluded in October, and the sentencing were handed down on November 14th. A report published on the police website last Thursday detailed the outcome. And now to security matters. Several women in Edo State have called for an end to killings of young men in the state orchestrated by clashes between various cult groups. The women, carrying placards with various messages and chanting songs of displeasure, converged on the secretariat of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, expressing worry over the loss of many young men to the violent clashes. They called on relevant security agencies to take stronger action to bring an end to the killings.
Your voice holds great influence in fostering reconciliation and promoting dialogue among all members of our society. I appeal to you, sir, ma, to use your esteemed position to advocate for an immediate end to the senseless violence plaguing our communities by encouraging peaceful coexistence, dialogue, and understanding.
We are no longer comfortable with what is going on in this state. Everybody is scared. Even with these women, we are so afraid because we have brothers, we have husbands, we have uncles. Please, we just want to put an end to this madness. We are no longer happy with the present situation.
Almost all us in those states, killing now they happen. Since last week now, we have lost young girls are falling to widows every day. 20-something, early 30s, they are widows. Two people will share because still they are topless in one place. So this are the problem. I beg, one I help us.
Several stakeholders, including the Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, and the Nigerian Shippers Council, have opposed the proposed legislation aimed at establishing the Nigerian Marine Corps. According to some members of parliament, the proposed Marine Corps is expected to safeguard the nation's maritime infrastructure, but was widely rejected during a recent public hearing led or held by lawmakers. Our correspondent Idong Joseph has the report. Take a look.
Lawmakers view the establishment of a Marine Corps as a strategic initiative that will enhance Nigeria's maritime capabilities, protect its waters, and create a secure environment for trade and economic growth. Drawing comparison to the United States Marine Corps, the Russian Naval Infantry, and the South Korean Marine Corps, all specialized forces dedicated to securing their respective maritime interests, lawmakers argued that their vision for the Marine Corps is similar and not meant to create another branch of the military.
Establishing the Nigerian Maritime Corps is not merely a legislative effort, but it should be a strategic initiative based on the idea of the sponsor of the bill to enhance maritime prowess.
The focus on marine intervention is firmly rooted in the legislative agenda of the 10th House of Representatives, particularly in our goals of economic diversification and agricultural development.
However, during the public hearing, stakeholders expressed their concerns about the bill. The Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, and the Nigerian Shippers Council all opposed the bill, calling for the strengthening of existing security agencies in the country instead of creating new ones.
This venture, and with due respect, perhaps misadventure, is a recipe for confusion. Most importantly, what threat analysis was carried out, like somebody said? What does this Corps intend to do differently? And like many others have said, why not strengthen already existing agencies, already existing services to do their work?
The bill for an act to establish the Nigerian Marine Corps shouldn't even come up in the first place, honestly, if you ask me.
Some representatives from civil society organizations present at the hearing also opposed the bill, urging the House to reject it during its third reading, arguing that it is unnecessary. The chairman of the committee, while adjourning the hearing, promised that due diligence will be exercised in the legislative process concerning the bill. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Nigeria ranks 122 of 144 countries on the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Index, sparking concerns, particularly among women, that the country is regressing in female representation in leadership. Experts argue that constitutional amendments are essential if Nigeria is to achieve equal representation of both genders in leadership roles or challenge entrenched gender stereotypes. News Central's Omolola Ololade has more.
Among 146 countries, Nigeria ranks 122nd on the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Index, with particularly poor rankings in educational attainment and political representation, both placed at 135th. Although Africa has made slow progress towards achieving gender equality across various sectors, interventions by government and non-governmental organizations have not yielded significant results. This backdrop underscores the relevance of a gender conference aimed at spotlighting women's issues and stressing the importance of amplifying their voices.
I think the summary of what I have shared here today is that no society, no community can make any progress if you do not involve women and men at all levels in all spheres. And it's extremely important for women to have voice, space and agency so that they can become whatever it is they are meant to be.
In Nigeria, experts attribute the unequal representation of women in leadership roles to systemic flaws in the country's political structure. They emphasize the need for constitutional reforms and effective implementation to dismantle gender stereotypes.
In the democratic process, you have the political process and you have the electoral system. So when you look at the political system, that is where the women have the problem of scaling the primaries to emerge as candidates for gubernatorial positions, because we are yet to produce a female governor. We almost came close this last time with the Adamawa.
If we want to debunk, if we want to challenge, if we want to strike down those myths, those misconceptions, those stereotypes which men use in the campaigning, in the contestation, we will need to draw on tools such as law. And again, unfortunately, because they know that will happen, we've had opposition to that, even at the National Assembly. But we will not stop.
It is undeniable that gender plays a crucial role in either advancing or hindering societal development. Therefore, creating policies and initiatives to support women across all sectors is imperative. In Lagos for News Central, I am Omolola Ololade.
Now, due to the continuous fuel crisis and its skyrocketing price, the Nigerian government introduced the compressed natural gas CNG initiative. The government said this is to reduce the hardship of the people and move the automotive sector to cleaner energy. Our correspondent Adebola Adedugwa takes a closer look on how effective this could be. Take a look.
In June 2023, the average petrol price in Nigeria reached 532 naira per litre, a drastic increase of 208% from the preceding year. Following series of fuel scarcity this year, the present pump price stands at an average of 1,025 naira.
Last year, I used to have a fill-up of between 12,000 and 15,000. And this year, my fill-up is above 40,000.
In a bid to ease the burden of high price of petrol and also transition Nigerian vehicles to cleaner energy, the government introduced CNG initiative, compressed natural gas, in May 2023, but listed approved centers September 2024. But how well have people received this initiative?
For me, I don't want to take that risk. Let me be managing what I know for now, other than to venture into such an unknown cause. At the end of the day, the regret will be very, very, very massive. So I don't want to.
I would really like to wait for when they bring it on board, and I've seen samples of people who have experimented on it, so that I'll know the outcome and at that time my decision can be made. But for now, I insist I'll stay on the one we are in the petrol one now.
Mama repo 65,000 every day. Coprolite, àwọn èrò gan-an ń kanra torí pé kí ni wọ́n mọ́tò tí wọ́n jù. But àwọn náà tafẹ́ gbé wọn náà, epo ta fi ń repo almost something thousand a day. But wọ́n gbé gáàsì nísìn, mọ̀ pé gáàsì ò lè tó yẹn.
With the campaign for adoption of CNG, there are concerns bordering on safety, but experts believe those fears are exaggerated.
Natural gas is still the safest. It is safer than petrol, safer than even the gas used at home. The gas at home is even more dangerous, more volatile, sorry, let me not use that word, more volatile than this gas. What happened in Benin is a very sorry case where some people think that they can weld the tank. The technology for CNG tanks is such that it is seamless. There is no welded part on it.
If you do it with a certified federal government center, then you are rest assured of the materials that they are using. You do a walk-around check on a daily basis. Move around the vehicle, check the cylinder area, try out to perceive smell. So the moment you are perceiving smell, so that means there is leakage. Then when you are feeling the gas, it's not advisable to stay inside the vehicle while you are feeling the gas.
It appears there's a need for continuous awareness campaigns to demonstrate the advantages of converting to CNG and possibly flexible payment options to accommodate every spectrum of the society. In Lagos for News Central, Adebola Adeduba.
Nigeria's Minister of Budget and Economic Planning has called for the acquisition of relevant data that will support the growth and development of the continent. This was during the commemoration of African Statistics Day held in Abuja, the nation's capital. Our correspondent Joshua Imarayi reports.
It was the commemoration of the 2024 African Statistics Day themed supporting education by modernizing the production of fit-for-purpose statistics. The event, which held in Nigeria's federal capital, Abuja, brought together senior government officials, including the nation's Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, the Statistician General of the Federation, and other statisticians across the nation. Speaking at the event, Nigeria's Minister of Budget and Economic Planning says that inclusive development begins with empowering the continent's population through reliable and comprehensive data.
For Africa to thrive in the 21st century, we must equip our people, particularly our youth, with the skills needed to navigate and contribute to the global economy. Achieving this requires data that is not only comprehensive, but also accurate, timely, and tailored to specific purposes. This is where the modernization of statistical production comes into place.
Also speaking at the event, the Statistician General of Nigeria highlighted the urgent need for innovation and adaptability in the nation's statistical system, adding that traditional methods are no longer sufficient to address modern challenges.
As the coordinator of the statistical system in Nigeria, I am glad that the members of the system are already coming to the realization of the fact that we must innovate, we must adapt, and we must change if we have to remain relevant in providing policymakers and all users with timely, relevant, and reliable statistics.
The UNICEF representative at the event called for significant improvement in data gathering to ensure that it effectively serves its purpose in shaping policies and strategies in education and other sectors.
Unfortunately, education, data governance and management in Nigeria has room for improvement. The data is not often relevant since some of the important data is not collected. Data is not accurate sometimes because the proper data validation mechanisms are not in place. Data is not complete because not all the schools are providing data requested. Data is not timely as data is not made available when needed. And most importantly, many of the data we collected with tremendous efforts are not used for the decision making.
The celebration of the 2024 African Statistics Day underscores the urgent need to transform statistical system to address Africa's educational and economic challenges. These, they say, will ensure that no one is left behind in the journey towards progress. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
You're watching news now on News Central Television. We're going on a short break, but coming up, Sudan Army Chief rejects foreign interference in war after Russia-UN veto. We'll bring you the details after the break. Join us again. Sudan's Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan on Tuesday rejected any foreign interference in the country's war, a day after Russia vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire. Speaking at an economic conference in Port Sudan, Burhan dismissed detects aimed at forcing solutions upon them and praised Russia's supportive stance. He said his government had never agreed to the draft resolution, which sought to end the war between his army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces led by his former deputy, Mohamed Amda Danglo. The war, which erupted in April 2023, has killed tens of thousands and uprooted more than 11 million people, creating what the UN has called the world's largest displacement crisis. And now to Somaliland, where its country's electoral commission announced on Tuesday that the opposition leader has won the presidency of the breakaway territory. International observers praised the 13th November election, in which about 1.2 million people were registered to vote, as a testament to Somaliland's peaceful democracy. According to the election commission chairman, Musa Yusuf, Abdurrahman Mohammed Abdullahi, popularly known as Ero, won the election with 63.292% of the vote, significantly ahead of outgoing President Masoud Bihi, who got 34.81%, and Social Justice Party leader Faisal Warabi, who polled 0.74%. The 68-year-old Abdullahi has outlined few concrete policy changes, but emphasizes his ambition to serve as a unifying figure. He accuses Bihi of having divided Somaliland during his tenure.
tirada codadka xisbiga wadani helay waa 407,908 cod oo u dhiganta boqolkiiba 63.29. tirada codadka xisbiga kulmiye helay waa 225,519 cod oo u dhiganta 34.81 boqolkiiba. tirada guud ee codaysay doorashada madaxweynaha iyo ku-xigeenka madaxweynuhu waa 647,860. tirada guud ee codadka ansaxa ah doorashada madaxweynaha ku-xigeenka madaxweynaha waa 638,126. tirada codadka xumaaday ee doorashada madaxweynaha iyo ku-xigeenka madaxweynuhu waa 9,000.
Mozambique's opposition party, Renamo, has called for the annulment of last month's contentious elections, heightening tensions that have already resulted in weeks of deadly protests. Renamo, formerly the country's largest opposition force, has joined Podebo's party leader, Venancio Mondlane, in rejecting the 9 October election results. Mondlane claims the vote was fraudulent and has urged continued demonstrations. He has also demanded the formation of an interim caretaker government to oversee the country until new, free, fair and transparent elections can be held. The National Election Authority announced that the ruling Frelimo party, which has been in power for nearly 5 decades, secured 71% of the votes. Mondlane's Podemos party garnered 20%, while Renamo lagged behind with just 6%. You're watching news now on News Central Television. Still ahead, schools short across United Kingdom as snow brings chaos. We'll bring you the details after this break. Join us again. Hey, welcome back. At least 74 schools have been forced to close today after the Met Office issued 3 yellow snow and ice warnings. The UK's National Weather Service warned of disruptive conditions across the West Midlands, Greater Manchester, North Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Thousands of people have been affected by the return of sub-freezing temperatures, with several schools closing for the day. Some schools in Yorkshire were forced to close after heavy snowfall, while others in Oxfordshire shut due to electrical and water supply issues. Pupils in Berkshire, Herefordshire and Nottinghamshire have also faced closures. Parents have been advised to check online to confirm whether their child's school has been impacted by the adverse weather conditions. And off to Ukraine, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared that 2025 will be a decisive year in determining the outcome of the war with Russia, nearly 3 years after the invasion began. Speaking to Parliament on the 1000th day of the conflict, Zelensky unveiled a resilience plan designed to ensure Ukraine's stability during critical periods ahead. His address came in the wake of U.S. approval for Kyiv to launch American missiles into Russian territory. Moscow has escalated aerial strikes on Ukrainian cities and reportedly deployed over 10,000 North Korean troops.
А вони будуть у наступному року. Ми маємо не допустити, щоб хтось у світі засумнівався у стійкості всієї нашої держави. І на цьому етапі війни вирішується, хто дотисне. Або ми ворога, або ворог нас, українців і європейців, і всіх в світі, хто хоче жити і жити вільно, і не підпорядковане якомусь одному диктатору.
The UN says an average of 3 children have been killed every day in Lebanon since Israel escalated its attack at targeting Hezbollah 2 months ago. This number comes to over 200 children in total. James Elder, spokesperson for the UN Children's Emergency UNICEF, decried what he called the lack of meaningful response from those with influence. According to him, the silence of the world is deafening. He said this while drawing up parallels with the ongoing conflict in Gaza, condemning the killing of healthcare workers as well.
Over the last 2 months in Lebanon, an average of 3 children have been killed every single day. Of course, many more have been injured, many more traumatized. Medical facilities have been attacked. Health workers are being killed at an increasing speed. As of November 15, more than 200 health sector workers had been killed and 300 injured, all according to Lebanon's Ministry of Health. Indeed, in Lebanon, much the same that is the case in Gaza, the intolerable is transforming into the acceptable. The appalling is slipping into the realm of the expected. And once more, the cries of children go unheard. The world's silence grows deafening, and again we allow the unimaginable to become the landscape of childhood, a horrific and unacceptable new normal.
Nigeria's economic landscape is characterized by significant disparities, with millions facing difficulties in making ends meet, while others seek better opportunities abroad. In this discussion, we explore survey findings that highlight the severity of these issues, such as the 20% of Nigerians reporting no income, the 1 in 4 who lack adequate emergency funds, and the growing aspirations to emigrate in search of a better life. Now, during a segment on Business Edge, Kalu Aja, a certified financial instructor, shared his insights on the sentiments expressed by some Nigerians who claim they would leave without looking back. Take a look.
I mean, the best investment you can make right now is skills. If you can learn a skill that you can turn around and monetize, i.e. then charge more for those skills, that's the best way. And that's what Jackpot really is. You want to take the Naira and maybe go abroad and learn a skill that you can then make more income. Either income in foreign exchange or higher Naira income. If it's just to leave, 20 million is, a million is about 700 Naira. So I'm not sure what 20 million will do for you. It will take you there, it will give you a good start. But if you just want to go there and start from the bottom of the ladder, it might be on a long thing. You want to plan this out and say, if I have this funds, either I do something in Nigeria or I want to go learn a skill that later on will give me access to higher income. That's how I would look at it. If you're younger, it makes more sense. If you're older, even if you have 20 million Naira, you might be in a bit of a flux here. Numbers in Nigeria, it's really negative. The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics had published a consumption report since 2022. No consumption happened in Nigeria. No one has the funds to spend outside the necessities of food, utilities, and transportation. That's why you see so many companies with unsold inventory, job losses, because it's a circular economy. So your output is my income, and my income is from the output of someone else. So if I cannot spend, then someone cannot earn, and of course that vicious circle is developing.
Nigerian champions Edo Queens will not play in the final of the CAF's Women's Champions League after losing 3-1 to TP Mazembe in the first semi-final of the ongoing competition. Edo Queens had looked on course for a place in the final in their maiden appearance after MM Essien had lofted the ball over the opposition keeper in the 65th minute to put the Nigerians ahead. But a 90th minute equalizer for Mavali Kanjiga ensured that the game would go into extra time. An unfortunate own goal by teenage defender Comfort Folonsho gave the Congolese champions the lead in the 101st minute, before Maline Yaz Kasaji converted a 108th minute penalty to seal the win. TP Mazembe will now face the winner of the North African showdown between FAR Rabat of Morocco and Masar of Egypt in the final. Very sad news there. Well, Cameroon secured a 2-1 win over Zimbabwe in their final 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier on Tuesday at the Amadou Ahidjo Stadium in Yaoundé. Now, the indomitable Lions finished unbeaten at the top of Group J with 4 wins and 2 draws. Zimbabwe had already qualified for the finals and finished second in the group with 2 wins, 3 draws and 1 loss. Cameroon took control early with Vincent Abubakar scoring in the 18th minute for a 1-0 lead. Just 5 minutes later, Joseph Kelvin and Kodu doubled the head to the lead, to make it 2-0 at halftime. Zimbabwe fought back in the second half with Taras Jikamanja pulling one back on the 73rd minute, but Cameroon held for the win. Well, congratulations to the team. And that's all we can take at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. President Tinubu has sent a 2025 to 2027 medium-term expenditure framework to National Assembly for approval. 4 Nigerians have been jailed by court in the UK over violent knife attack in 2021. And we also told you that Sudan Army Chief has rejected foreign interference in country's civil war. Now remember, they can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times at channel 274, Avo TV, or take us everywhere you go by streaming us live on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Judith at TV. Bye for now.